Good afternoon. This is October 14th. This is a second presentation with my engagement working jointly with the ChatGPT, Claude, and Gemini in the full use of these platforms in cultivating the a book which about 148 pages has written about there, and including the extracts coming from all these three area of the search. The pedagogy of conscience, where I have spent 4 extra segments this last week in Portuguese with my engagement with Brazil. And I will emphasize more why this is a workload of research involving pretty much with Brazil. Number one, I will repeat part of my cross-cultural experience. Born in China in 48, left China to Macau, 52 to 62. My 10 years in Brazil, baptized Roman Catholics by the Roman Catholic Order of the Jesuits, Matteo Ricci mission, and then the Salesians Order from Turin, one of the best educational system I think that I have received. And in 62, my family emigrated to Brazil, and where I continued with the Salesians study. And with this second home, a very extremely rich experience that I have lived through, and also in part of my development with early degrees and master's degree in counseling psychology, and also the system I have created called 3 C's: the communication dynamic, communication analytica, and tying both together is called the cultural sphere, which at that time predominantly with the student body that I was involved. And 45 years later, after 1977, like many people, we have decided to jump ship and get into the security of economics, in part because the system, the bureaucracy, was not really that suitable at that time. I just found that it was a little bit docile, a little bit timid, not to be negative. So Kathy and I, my wife, have decided to go into business. After 2 or 3 years, at the same time evaluating our background and our resources, and plus my handling of the 5 languages, my love for Brazil, my curiosity with the Buddhism in Brazil is in the early, when I turned 17, when I was looking into the mission, the seminary school of the Salesians, heading west to Brazil, Mato Grosso, and with all the native tribes like the Chavantes, is more about the curiosity than being linking to the religious group. But nevertheless, it was one of the best education I have ever received, enjoying it, learning it, growing, and progressing in that 3 years during my time with the Salesians in Brazil. So going back to this duality, economic independence in education, and the progress in develop the counseling theory and counseling practice, which was giving results. But all in all, what I have come to this last 3 weeks in sharing with the Brazilian groups, and some feedbacks, good feedback, schoolmates, and also other who share my platform in Facebook, called Conscientization. And because of this word conscientization, which coming from Paulo Freire of Brazil. Paulo Freire is one of the greatest teacher, scholar, professor theologian or philosopher. Not that he had anything to do with theology, but it was at the same time that is the situation in Brazil when the Brazilians incoming military regime and booting out the quote unquote the socialist regime of Jean Goulart. 1964, I was a teenager, still in the school with the Salesians. What I have found the conscientization by Paulo Freire had influenced my journey in Brazil, my journey in education, my journey even toward my master's. The conscientization of Paulo Freire basically had taken me back from my journey to the West from age 14, 1962, all the way until we're jumping a little forward in 2008, when I turned 60, I took off, went back to Brazil to visit one of my old friend, ethnic Chinese, who became the bishop of the Indians up north in the upper Amazon, in the Rio Negro region, bordering Colombia and Venezuela, south of the equator. I just got word that he's got Parkinson's and did not look well, but I've decided to take a retreat of 6 weeks. And first of all, to visit with him, make company with Bishop Song, S-O-N-G is his name, and also another curiosity linking to another linguistic group called the Ninkatu in the region, with some 30 plus ethnic groups, name of the Tucano, Bare, and Baniwa, and also the Yanomami in that region. So that particular 60 days also had given me another orientation, education in the sharing with the two bishops, the former bishop of the San Gabriel de Cachoeira, which is the parish of the region. And then there were 8 priests who were serving the parish, which is involving the villages up and down the river in the Rio Negro. Extremely grateful to Osvaldo Capianchi, the priest who had directed me and guided me in our sharing of many, many hours, the videos and also books and all about the link to the cultural anthropology of Darcy Ribeiro, and then again more surfacing of the work of Paulo Freire along with Darcy Ribeiro. And in this particular time, and is really the kind of awakening that come to me when the emphasis of the Paulo Freire with his educational format, name, conscientization. And this is the beginning of my journey emulating the Monkey King, the latest story, Journey to the West. And then in 2008, at age 16, when I'm looking back, what can I do with my 3C system? And during COVID, combining the 2008 the economic crisis in the U.S., the Wall Streets and Lehman Brothers and whatnot, and give me another turning point to look into Paulo Freire. He's one of the few Western educators who have used precisely the Chinese usage on conscientized, in a verb, conscientization. How can we make people aware of conscience? Well, this is an open format. I'm still developing the pedagogy of the conscience, where conscience cannot be taught. Conscience is never a discipline, and conscience is not of any methods. Conscience is part of the crystallization of the man thinking. From thinking, we reflect collectively. or we become introspective. Borrow the word from Socrates: a life is not examined, is not worth living. And also in the thinking process, there's the imagination, the creation of so many things, the creativity of man. And so by giving much thoughts about conscience, when I just push simple Google Translate or just dictionary, conscience in Chinese is written with two words: kindness and the character of heart, liang xing. Kindness, goodness, heart. And often, as a youngster, from the oral traditions, in my 10 years in Macau, the 52 to 62, living with my mother and two aunts. Father already emigrated to Brazil in 52, and my siblings, two sisters, my brother, plus the maid, older maid. And when the older folks talking to us as the naughty, they will call us Malau. You are the monkey, naughty monkey. Always cultivate conscience. 有良心 in Cantonese. You must cultivate a kind heart. So in part of the reading books and with the academicians, and in part of the living experience in Macau as a youngster, all this word coming into place. And I have exactly going through this method. When how can we promote, how can we raise awareness about human conscience? And this is where I'm starting to do the research and looking back about another person talking about conscientization in the Chinese format is the known Chinese scholar, philosopher by the name of Wang Yang Ming. It was in the 14th century, in the year 1500s, in the Ming Dynasty, where Wang managed to create, had consolidated the three main Chinese disciplines, plus I Ching, plus some other discipline before, but basically the basic three is the teaching of Confucius and the teaching of Lao Tzu and the teaching of Buddha by way of India. I keep emphasizing the word teaching is because here comes the crust of the major Western ignorance about the Chinese cultural educational system. And here's why. By all means, this is not about derogatory. We can be ignorant of many things. For those who are engaged in humanity and studies, I probably as a zero, totally ignorant about science, about cosmics, and about all the other sciences, or engineering, just to make it simple. But what had this Western ignorance impact on not knowing for all this many years about the three disciplines, the main core value of the Chinese were not religion. I'm drawing another demarcation, the line about the Western expansion. I love history. And now I will speak more about the Portuguese navigation, about all the seafarers from Columbus. You will find out more actually Portuguese, never Italian. Vasco da Gama, who went into India, who circumvented the Cape of Africa, got into India, Calcutta, and then China. Then you have Pedro Álvares Cabral in 1500, who had found the Brazil. And then the last one, just like Columbus, employed by the Spanish court, and then went on to the Portuguese have done going down the coast of Africa, and then before they turn east from the Cape of Good Hope into the Indian Ocean and then into China. The last one was Magellan. Now, in Portuguese, we know him as Ferdinand Magalhães. And he did the same thing. There's some kind of purpose when he was going around the coast of South America, where he was already aware of the entry of the Pedro Alves Cabral, who found Brazil, and then all the way down to the entries to part of South Argentina, and went across to the Pacific. And from the Pacific, he landed the first island in the Pacific, Guam, used to be known as Isla de los Ladrones, the island of thieves, eventually Philippines, where he got murdered. But anyway, his team went back from the Philippines by way of the Pacific, by way of the Indian Ocean, eventually back to Portugal. And trust me, it's interesting. With all this devastation, one or two ships I don't recall are still bringing to enormous profit for the Spanish courts with the spice islands in that region. But what I'm trying to emphasize, the four navigators were all of Portuguese origin. There'll be a lot of argument, debate about the origin of Christopher Columbus, coming from, is a bastard child from the Count of Beja in the province called Alentejo in Portugal, and then his mother is of a Jewish converso family by the name of Zarco, Z-A-R-C-O. And Zarco is one of the also explorer who had discovered the islands of Madeira. So directly, indirectly, Columbus was the first cousin of the King João or John in Portugal. And by the reading, the bits and pieces of history, even this are not the official language written by the court, when Columbus discovered the islands in the Caribbean, and when he returned to Lisbon, not Sevilla, he came to visit. The first 2 weeks, he spent the time with Portugal. So a book was written by Macarena Barretos, calling him the 007 from Portugal. My summary and hypothesis, again, in the format that we are sharing, nothing is written in stone. In fact, much of the subject matter in Explorer can be shared by the audience with your counter views, agreement, disagreement. Eventually, we can be sharing, because by the criticism or by the counter view, we are shaping what we are speaking with greater validity. And in this part of sharing, that's how I have developed one of the very present and future platform, which is, I named it Open Books. Actually, it's www, my name, complete, Paul Yi, or PAULYIH.AI/Open Books. I am very encouraged by this installation. I don't know what magnitude will happen with the engagement of the entire world, just in search, just like these explorers, in search of truth, in search of knowledge. I'm very confident in the format that I'm doing so. On the one side, I'm evaluating all the explorers of the continents above and beyond the Vikings and the other ethnic groups that would touch into the Greenland, Labrador, in North America. But in this particular journey that I am doing, by highlighting the four Portuguese explorers, and look at the time frame. 1492, 1500, 1490. The Vasco da Gama is in between Columbus and between Pedro Alves Cabral. And then Magellan or Fernando Magalhães comes some 20 years later. But what I want to express my exploration of the hypothesis about the Portuguese already knew there's a continent in Brazil, because the Portuguese were very much intimidated first by the Spanish overtaking the islands the Portuguese had discovered, again by the Henry, the school of navigators, of the Canarias, the Canary Islands. At that particular time and point, the Portuguese are already coming down to the coast of Africa and very much aware of the fact that they were very fluid, traveling up and down from today's Ghana and straight going west to Ghana, to South America, Brazil, in the center of the island called Tristan da Cunha. What is interesting is that Tristan da Cunha happened when my family were traveling in 62 from Hong Kong through Penang, Singapore, the Malacca Strait, going to the Indian Ocean, crossing over to the landed in the island of Mauritius, bypassing Madagascar, going east to Lourenço Marques in the Mozambique, today's Maputo, and from Maputo going south to Port Elizabeth, Durban, beautiful cities, and Cape Town. And from Cape Town, we're crossing over the Atlantic, supposed to be in Rio and then Santos. That's our entry into Brazil. But in that voyage, halfway between the Atlantic Ocean, we stopped on the island which was sinking, and the island is called Tristan da Cunha. Again, when you're reading more history books where you personally had one time or another was in that spot called Tristan da Cunha, that was the relay stations from Ghana, Portugal at that time, the Portuguese travelers, navigators, and crossing over to Brazil. That was the 1460s, 1470. One more evidence for me to give credit to the Portuguese discovery of Brazil before Pedro Alves Cabral. First, the Portuguese were intimidated by the power of the Catholic king and queen. Spain, much bigger than Portugal, with a much greater territory and much more resources. But by setting up the Spaniards into the Caribbean, landed into Cuba, and listen, when Columbus named Cuba, the only Cuba that exists in the old world is nearby his birthplace, also named Cuba in Alentejo, from his father's family, the Duke of Beja, B-E-J-A. So this is one rationalization, not reasoning, but with some kind of a justification. But what is more concrete is when the Pope, I trust, is the debauchery Borgia of Spanish origin in Italy, have to make a decision to draw the line, the treaty called Tordesillas in Portuguese, LHA ending, but in Spanish, Tordesillas. The Portuguese fought like hell to take on 200 leagues further from the west, from that line, because the Pope decided, since the Spanish had found the Americas, let that part of the continent belong to Spain, and the Portuguese coming down from the south, the west coast of Africa, find Asia. Draw the line in the middle. Let the Americas be part of Spain, and let the Africa, Asia be part of the Portuguese. And the Portuguese worked so hard, so harshly, defending the line to be expanded. Why only 200 leagues? It's like 1,500 kilometers, which is giving them a huge part of Brazil. So life is about learning, exploring hypotheses, yes or no. So even this could be just a hearsay. But with more hearsay, when this story and this presentation exploration can be viewed by more people, maybe by the Ghanaian today, maybe by the Sierra Leone, maybe by Nigeria, and all the observation can be seen not just by one commentary or one facet of the history. That's also the same reason why open books is created, because the AI is terrific. The storage of the data today is dynamic. With the 6G incoming, facilitating the use of the algorithm, the quantum count, as the way I'm using Claude, Gemini, ChatGPT, no matter how long my question is much more extended, maybe 1 to 3 paragraphs, the response is usually coming less than 1 minute. With the sequence, or basically in this exchange, they organize my ideas of bits and pieces. You and I cannot have that comprehensive awareness or memory in a written form. But in the use of the ChatGPT, in the use of Claude, in the use of Gemini, they have been able to give me a solidified reply with time sequence. Now, everybody going to say about this, well, these are still information. There's no verification. Here comes the huge power that open books can do. Open books is the blockchain. Open books is another screener. When in the future, all these documents is an education for all, the context of the document can be eventually transformed to the level of writing for any grade, from graduate school, college, high school, junior high, and whatever level. This is the absolutely amazing time when we seek knowledge, but more than just knowledge, viable, solid knowledge. And what open books is the screener. Open books is the blockchain. In this presentation, whoever was listening to talk about the Portuguese navigation, like say in the future, within an hour, if I do the CC here, the caption, commanding in the language, if Google can give me the printout in real time, a document of the narration can be solidified, still in the electronic format to open books. I or my team can do the first edition, because phonetically, many times, with anybody speaking English with an accent or anyone else, there will be words slightly mixed. You do the first edition, and the document remain to be electronic. The organization of the open books can starting from ground zero. Such from this particular presentation, I'm talking about Conscientization of Paulo Freire, the name shows up. I'm talking about Wang Yang Ming, another name can be showed up, the keywords. But when it comes to the Portuguese navigation, all my friends, I look at them as all my pals, can make an insertion on that particular point of error or highlight. I agree with you. Beautiful idea. So you can come in for praise, your comment. You can come in for accentuating or correcting the error. Maybe even have a spell check. What is more fascinating in the future, in my use of the Claude, Gemini, ChatGPT, I just type in a few words saying of Confucius. I just comma English. They come back with a full text. I just want to verify. Here there's a hearsay in Chinese. I can put it into Chinese. They responded by who was the author. Was that Confucius? Somewhere not. What I'm highlighting is that in today's learning, for those who are seeking truth, who want to know, really want to know knowledge, you can exploit, explore, use these formats. Imagine, even for the Chinese like us, many of us can speak plainly, called the common language. In Cantonese, we call the official language before the Mandarin, they call Hua, the white language of the in Guangzhou, well-spoken Cantonese. In what we know about the common speaking language today, we're also aware the written format called Gu Wen of the old language. We can changing, just like the old English, Elizabethan English, with all the thee, thou, put up into a language for me to understand. In the same can be done into a, who knows, Guarani Tupi of our Brazil, of South American language, or Mapuche, in phonetic. So for those who does not have a written language, that language can be translated into just a phonetic sound of a language. So I look at the dynamic use of the AI era, the digital era, and the quantum count, the speed of formatting, translating. So if you don't like what is ChatGPT, use Claude, use Gemini, and I am definitely know there will be other similar applications in all the language. Now, this is just the first format. The second format is that I speak the first edition in the same context, inserting. There's no need for any part of a category. In the system, you will self-assembly by your keyword, and that will show up. And if you are a teacher, you assign your student to do the job, to conduct the research on a certain topic, your name, your school, time, period, what semester, what year, and the name of your students, all based on the agreement, you come into the open book. This is where the human can regenerate more and more of our information. We all know our work in bits and pieces without the coherence of the system sequencing that I am valuing what this AI tools I have received so far. Then 100%. Here it comes. Open books is where this question and doubts, that will become another interactive exchanges vigorously. Maybe the Italian will fight me again for Columbus originality, and where the Portuguese will show me more evidence, including one of the major importance, because Columbus was related from his lineage of the Count of Beja, which is the first cousin of King John. So Columbus literally is the cousin of John. And now, through another lineage, the marriage between Spain and Portugal and the prince and princelings, one of the young Spanish noble with the Portuguese blood is in Sevilla. Up until now, they were not able to open up the coffin, extracting DNA. They already had the DNA of Christopher Columbus. Cristoforo in Italian, Christopher, and Salvador, with all the logos, symbolism he used, and the three boars, also a form of practice, a symbolism using at the time of the merchants, Jewish merchants in Iberia, in Portugal and Spain. So there's so many bits and pieces we can do. But what ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini will be able to make the assembly. Don't take it for 100%. Take it for 50%. It's all depending how you take on the information and then regenerating from this one group from the other. I was just looking for Magellan. And I just, from Magellan's, allow me to think link. We have that Chinese called Luanxiang, Lunsheng, thinking. And all of a sudden, it shows up another Silk Road of the Chinese was created from that region of China, Fujian, southern China, ethnic Chinese, took it to Manila, a Spanish colony at that time, and from the Spanish colony, traveled back to the Mexican coast and take them physically over the mountain onto the Caribbean and deliver to Spain. And basically just one commodity called the mantilla. Manta is the manta ray. Mantilla is the shrub of the Spanish women use. If you look at the flamenco dance, how often was the most visible? Or they use for church, they use to cover their heads. So the Silk Road by way of Manila was another Silk Road. Just imagine that, just one commodity, the mantilla. And that's why you see the church in Manila and Mexico City are almost identical. What I'm thinking very openly from this concept and idea of conscientization from Paulo Freire, whom I have loved and respect all my life, had given me the inspiration to reconnect conscience education to Wang Yang Ming, and from Wang Yang Ming took me back to the era 500 BC of the Chinese scholars plus Buddha, and linking to the same era of the Greek thinkers. What is most important when I'm talking about this gap of generational in our own cultural sphere of the West have made a huge error. I'm going back and forth about the 1492. That's when the Spanish Inquisition, ordering all the non-Catholic Moors and Jews must exile Iberia. And not pointing finger to either one, but this mandate was ordered for the conversion 100 years ago. By the time of 1492, the Catholic king and queen have decided to exercise what they were asking for. I'm not endorsed, it's not approval, but we had to understand in 1492 is what brought me into a certain line in history. 1492, starting the Western expansion, and that expansion into the colonization, into the massacres without blaming anybody. We just talk about the butchery of Pizarro in Inca up in the Peruvian mountains, and Cortés with his systematic killing of the Aztecs, Mayans, Olmec in Mexico. The colonization had set the European forever into global land expansion, slavery, plus using slave to plant all the vices. The first vice, let's laugh about it. Drinking tea is what made the British wanted to go to China, recapture the silver by drinking tea, and switch them with opium planted in British India, in Bangladesh, where the two Jewish family had become the most wealthiest, is the Sassoon from Iraq and the Rothschilds, who are already in control of the British economy by my count, with the use and abuse of the East India Company, the East Indian Company's military government group, who had also colonized India 100 years before they came into China for the opium. And look at this, relating to this subject matter about the colonization of the West, and eventually the entire colonization of Africa, Asia, and America, with the three, the economic revolutions with the invention of the steam engine from the English steam engine. When they came into the shores in China, there's no comparison. The hot weapon, cannonballs, fighting the spears and shields and whatnot the Chinese had. Even Chinese have a much larger number in troops. But at this point, I try to make it compact, is that remember well, the West, with their colonization, had taken out 3/4 of the world's wealth, which was India and China, at 1840 on. For those who are watching Downton Abbey, seeing the decline with the British, when the colonies start to declining. And look at the next revolution, the invention, the electricity, the train, the railroad systems in the robber baron days of America, and petroleum. That's another time and period of the Industrial Revolution. And the third is the most obvious, is in our time, or in 1991, when we started using internet and the software from Microsoft and spreadsheets and words that had allowed me creating my system of the jam tray called jam files. But that's another time. But what I'm highlighting to that line in 1492, when 1500, Wang Yang Ming already had the consolidation of the Chinese study into a very simple language called Xingshi, the study of the heart. And I translated it into English, created called Conscientology, the study of conscience. So what I'm really trying to have this think linkage, and the idea comes up with another in the format of the storytelling. We're already moving ourselves forwards and backwards, not backward. In the use of this medium, now we are back to the Greek era of the oral tradition. Orators, speakers speak, scribers write. Same time with the Confucius, and the same time with that time and period of the Chinese academicians in that era. But now we have all the tools on our hands, repeating the procedures, speaking, the tape at this point by Google. We have our own system to download all the voice into written format and allow to be open presentation to invite people to critique, to comment, to add, and this becoming a dynamic regeneration of the topic is no longer linear, one-sided. We are already hopping into the next ambience called the spatial web. And the spatial web application can do the same. When you're looking back to history, you start to look at the entire events of the Waterloo. You can look in from the angle, from the English, from the French, and from the family of the Rothschild. How did they get a hold of the results so quickly? And in that capture, the information, we can talk about disinformation, manipulated information, and allow the information given to the London Stock Exchange to have generated the kind of wealth in use of the body language. The Rothschild have not shown no facial expression when the stockholders looking at his face. Did England win, lose? They were all betting England going to lose to Napoleon. And then the Rothschild had captured the largest wealth at that time in UK system of finances. Another comment that I was reading, looking at spatial tubular. Wellington is a native from the region of the Waterloo in Belgium. It's also the first time the British dig themselves in the trenches with the white pants, the uniforms, the stiffness, the always that image. At that time, is the war, the battle is totally on this in your performance. There was the first time Wellington pulled his soldiers into the mud ponds of the swampy area to launch his attack. A guerrilla warfare started the element of surprise. By saying what I'm saying in the presentation that we are doing now in the open books, there will be other at the comment. Like it or not liking it, there's another version of it. We're going to find out. And same thing about eventually you look at this guerrilla, the guerrilla warfare had also created the American Revolutionary War when the Americans were fighting along with the Native Indians. In many occasions, one of the greatest American heroes in American history, Sam Houston, spoke fluent Cherokee, grew up with the Cherokees. And this all has some part of a contribution. And in each of the speaking engagement we have can be generating story after stories and more evidence. And along with that, you can pictures and whatnot, as I can receive from Claude or from Gemini. I think we're coming to a new era for the collective good in search for truth. I'm not a slogan man about truth and justice, but when you're finding out what you're presenting, what I'm presenting, finding the sort of good echo and the ripple effect will be regenerating more learning. And so I'm optimistic, and I'm not shy about my year's engagement with business and how can I format open books into a system that can have all participating with direct benefits of learning and also the potential benefit to the countries and nations when they can economize and become a part of the contribution to reduce the cost of educational system. Case in point, I have divided my future franchisees, okay, really, it's open to talk about, in 5 linguistic groups. I have formatted one group of language, I call it Romantina, because of my dislike, nothing against Esperanto, but Esperanto was written involving the Cyrillic forms of the Russians and the Slavic language. And I'm just trying to make this language I call Romantina, Roman Latin, into 5 languages of Spanish, Portuguese, Italian, French. First of all, the 600 million speak French, mostly in North Africa. 400 million Spanish in South America, Latin America. 300 million of Portuguese in Portuguese Africa, in Brazil, and also little spots in Asia, Timor and Macau, but that's minor. And Italians is come close to 150 million, the number I'm still not certain. By putting these 4 groups, my intention was the Romantina is a dictionary with sound, with picture images for a Chinese population now is already exceeding 600 million just with the engagement into English. But by advancing the Chinese student to learn a foreign language, when you put in one word in English, I use again and again the word station, very easy. You put station, Chinese, English come out of station. When you put Romantina, you'll come immediately with the sound of estação in Portuguese, with C cedilla, with the tio, and the estación in Spanish, and almost same phonetic sound, estación in French, and estazione in Italian. And all the sound come close to this linguistic sound. You will show up in maybe in Romania. The Romanians is one of the Romance language also, but this a little more distant. And then whatever regional language, the people who are interested in Gallego, the Galician language, come up because also in this group. But the major 4 language is the Portuguese, Spanish, Italian, and French. But that's just my sort of doing. But this is together come close to 1.3 billion speakers. Now you add China, it's 1.4 billion in Chinese. India, 1.4 billion Indian. Then you put this Arabic group together, it's 1.3 billion. English speaking is between 1.5, 1.6. If the licensing, I can charge him 30 cents per citizen, licensing to the country, and let the country's professionals to build their platforms. The joint number is 7 billion. At 30 cents is 2.1 billion a year. And then you can go up and down the scale. 30 cents, 50 cents, 20 cents, $1. But if this allocation of license can indicate to increase the performance of language skill of the citizens, and by this format can lessen other expenditure, again, not to take away the existing system, but if there room to improve a nation and language skills, information access, I have a platform. I have to have a platform that is functional and viable. And even with the 2 billion earning, I can give 80% to foundations to help many of the refugee camps everywhere in the world. And this is what I am very excited by one man's inspiration to talk about conscience. Now we come to the last one. Again, I'm not against, it's not a put down about people being ignorant. The reason this much conflicts with China, and to see American, where I live, have to spend 1.6 billion to further demonizing China or Huawei or whatever coming up of the Chinese AI development is heartbroken. Let me go back to that 1492 and 1500. This is the crucial. How can we overcome our own ignorance? Because the entire West, including my missionary, good Roman Catholics, we first came from the Abrahamic culture sphere, starting with the Judaism, the Roman Catholicism, Protestantism, and also Islamism. This ISM, using a Freudian projection, had basically destroyed the Western perception or the Western knowledge about the Chinese. Confucianism was never a religion, nor Lao Tzu, much less the teaching of Buddha. Yes, there were temples, looks like they were venerated, but never was a religion. And this is a huge cultural dissonance. As in my writing of the Pedagogy of Conscience, I was having a difficult time to show what is cultural dissonance. Diaspora is a dissonance, abrupt changing of one's life by war, by any disaster. Holocaust is another one. We can now call the Japanese war, we can call the opium Holocaust. With the big data, we'll find out the death toll and the losing of the Chinese value. As I said, repeating again, the world's wealth by the time of 1800, 3/4 of the world wealth lied with China and India. You look back in more aggregate sense, look at all the American universities, including Harvard, Yale, Brown. Look at the families like Franklin Delano Russell Roosevelt, Delano Russell Opium Company, the Forbes, the Astors, the entire East Coast American Ivy League schools. They all have some engagement into the old China trade. And that China trade is a shy way, not telling the world directly they were engaged with opium, because they know it was not right. Opium were not allowed in any part of the country in Europe, no America. But eventually, opium did got to the U.S. also by way of the Chinese from the workmen coming to the railroad for the gold rush, no, whatever. What I'm trying to say by pointing out this collective ignorance about the Chinese culture, and most erroneously by putting the Chinese language spoken from our hearts is conscience. And I hope in this presentation, all of us can learn, all of us can benefit from this kind of a clarity. And I'm most confident, and that's why this rush, this eagerness to write the Pedagogy of Conscience and highlighting in the use of the AI and the many engines in seeking truth and maybe justice. When we can identify all information and using my system, the open books, as a blockchain, screening by documents, the conscience is the other screener. We seek knowledge. The knowledge sphere, we capture some intelligence, which are giving a lot of people wealth, a lot of inventions, a lot of creations, serviced only private individuals or corporations. But conscience will screen off the good intelligence for the collective good back into the sphere of wisdom. And the human wisdom, conscience can put it back to overall knowledge. And that's part of my very simple hope for the future of our humanity. From Conscientization of Paulo Freire, I have translated the Wang Yang Ming's Conscientology, the study of conscience, and hope in the future there will be the entire planetary system, we can call it conscientological civilization. Civilization, which you do not have to make gains and earnings at the expenses of the other cultures, is the best civilization. And China had that record for 3,300 years. And I hope in this idea, some civilization can perpetuate, not by conquest, not by slavery, not by colonization, and not by decimation of the natives. Thank you for sharing. I keep my limit to 1 hour, and we will talk again.